Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My dad was stationed all over the place, so by the time I was in 8th grade, I had attended more schools than I could count on both hands. But when we got stationed at this base, something different happened. We stayed put for 4 whole years. 4 years might not sound like much to most people, but for me it was a record. I got to watch the same group of kids grow up. I made real friends for the first time instead of just temporary acquaintances. I joined clubs and actually got to see projects through to completion. It was the closest thing to a normal childhood I'd ever experienced. The longest relationship I had during those 4 years was with the high school band. I played oboe and had worked my way up to first chair by my junior year. Music had always been my constant companion through all those moves, and this band felt like home. Our band director during my freshman and sophomore years was incredible. She was the kind of teacher who made you want to be better, not because she demanded it, but because she believed you could be. She pushed us when we needed pushing, supported us when we struggled, and somehow managed to make even the most boring theory lessons feel important. When she announced she was leaving for a position at a university, the whole band was devastated. Then we met her replacement. Mr. B was everything our previous director wasn't. Where she had been encouraging, he was critical. Where she had been understanding, he was rigid. Where she had treated us like young adults, learning to be responsible, he treated us like inmates who couldn't be trusted with the simplest decisions. The guy seemed to take personal offense at teenage behavior and made it his mission to crush any sign of independence or personality. By spring of my junior year, I was already mentally checked out. My family had received orders to move overseas for my senior year, which meant I'd be starting fresh at an international school. Part of me was sad to leave the friends I'd made, but honestly, I was looking forward to getting away from Mr. B's constant negativity. That's when the dental appointment happened. It was nothing dramatic, just a routine cavity filling that needed to be done before we moved overseas. The dental clinic could only fit me in on a Tuesday afternoon, which meant I'd miss one band class, one single class out of hundreds I'd attended over the years. I walked up to Mr. B before school that morning and told him I needed to leave early for a dental appointment and would miss band class. He asked when the appointment was, and I told him it was at 1:30, so I'd need to check out during lunch. He just grunted and waved me away. I went to the dentist, got my tooth filled, and went home to do homework. Just another Tuesday afternoon. I had no idea what was brewing back at school. The next morning, I barely made it to my locker before a group of my bandmates surrounded me. They asked if I'd heard what happened in band yesterday. When I said no, they told me that Mr. B had completely lost it and spent 20 minutes ranting about dedication and commitment. They said he was talking about me without using my name, but everyone knew. That's when they filled me in on what I'd missed. Apparently, Mr. B had used my absence as a teaching moment. He'd launched into this huge lecture about how band members need to be dedicated and how we're a team where everyone needs to show up. He went on about how scheduling appointments during band class shows a lack of commitment to the group. My friends described how his face got red and he waved his arms around while saying things like how some people think their personal convenience is more important than the band. Everyone just sat there trying not to look at my empty chair while he ranted. The more they told me, the angrier I got. It wasn't just that he'd called me out publicly. It was that he'd done it when I wasn't there to defend myself. He'd made me look selfish and irresponsible to 80 other students over a routine medical appointment. See, being an army brat teaches you certain things. You'll learn to follow rules and respect authority. You'll learn to say yes, sir, and no, ma'am, without thinking about it. You'll learn that there's a chain of command and everyone has their place in it. I'd never been a troublemaker. I had a 3.9 GPA and had never so much as gotten a detention. But growing up military also teaches you about fairness and justice. And this wasn't fair. I walked straight to the band room during morning break and told Mr. B that I'd heard about his interesting lecture on dedication the day before. When he asked what about it, I told him that since he clearly thought I wasn't dedicated enough, for his band. I was making it easy for him by quitting effective immediately. I've never seen someone's face change color that fast. He went from normal to bright red in about 2 seconds. He yelled that I couldn't quit because he decided who was in the band. I told him that I just did quit and that I'd find another class to finish out the year. I turned to walk out, but he literally stepped in front of me and shouted that I didn't get to just walk out. He screamed that he was the one in charge and that I couldn't leave his class without his permission. I pointed out that this wasn't class time, it was my break, and I could go wherever I wanted. I walked around him and left. He was still yelling behind me, but I was done listening. My next stop was Coach N's room. Coach N taught art history and was one of those teachers everyone loved. He was fair, funny, and actually seemed to enjoy working with teenagers. I asked Coach N for a favor and explained the whole situation to him. He listened without interrupting and then sat back in his chair. He said it was a tough spot and asked if I was sure I couldn't work it out with Mr. B. I told him I'd been dealing with his attitude all year and yesterday was just the last straw. I explained that I didn't respect him as a teacher and wasn't going to pretend I did. Coach N said he taught art history the same period as band and that I was welcome to join his class if I could get it approved through the office. I told him that would be amazing. He reminded me that art history wasn't band and was a completely different kind of class. I said anything was better than sitting in that room pretending to respect someone who didn't deserve it. My next stop was the principal's office. I explained the situation to the secretary, and she set up a meeting with the principal for later that day. The principal asked if I wanted to switch out of band, and I confirmed that I did, explaining that Mr. B had made it clear the day before that he didn't think I belonged there. The principal said we'd need to discuss this with Mr. B and my parents before any changes could be made. I said that was fine and asked for the meeting to be scheduled as soon as possible. He said he'd set up a meeting for later that week, but Mr. B wasn't willing to wait for the meeting. When last period came around, I headed to Coach N's art history class. I barely sat down and started watching a slideshow about Coach N's trip to Rome when someone came to fetch me. The office aide told me I needed to report to band class immediately because I hadn't been officially transferred yet and had to go to my assigned class. That's when I decided on malicious compliance. If Mr. B wanted to play the game that I couldn't leave without his permission, then fine, I'd stay in his band. But he couldn't make me participate. I walked into the band room, took my front row seat as first chair oboe, and sat with my hands folded in my lap for the entire 90 minutes. I stared directly at Mr. B the whole time. I didn't take out my instrument, didn't warm up, didn't pull out sheet music, and didn't interact with anyone. I just sat there, passively showing that while he could make me stay in his class, he couldn't make me play. You'd think he'd get the hint and just let me transfer, but that wasn't Mr. B's style. For 2 days while they set up the meeting with my mom, I had to sit in that class and openly defy him. But he had a plan. He was going to threaten my grades and try to get my mom to force me to cooperate. Thankfully, I'd already talked to my mom about the situation, and she wasn't a fan of Mr. B either. Finally, the meeting day arrived. My mom and I sat in the principal's office while both sides explained their positions. After everyone had their say, Mr. B smugly declared that if he didn't let me out of his class, I had to stay and would get a failing grade. The principal took his side and tried to convince my mom to make me stay by pointing out that I had such great grades and asking if she really wanted those ruined. My mom said she thought I was right and that if I didn't want to stay in the class, we should just find an alternative. I told the principal that he could make me stay if that's what he wanted to do. Then I turned to Mr. B and explained that I had a 3.9 GPA and could afford one bad grade for 1/4 in an art credit. I said I didn't think that would ruin my future. I told them again that they could make me stay and give me a bad grade, but they couldn't make me play. I pointed out that every day, in front of every member of that band, I would openly defy him and asked if he really wanted that for the rest of the school year. I still remember the look of defeat on his face. It was glorious. The principal finally agreed to let me transfer to Coach N's art history class, and the rest of the school year in that class was fantastic. Right after graduating high school, I started working at this electronics store. Money was tight at home since my dad got laid off from the factory, and my mom's part-time job at the diner wasn't cutting it. College wasn't an option yet, so I figured I'd work for a year, save up some money, and then figure out my next move. The job seemed okay at first, basic retail stuff, helping customers find what they need, working the register, restocking shelves. The pay wasn't great, but it was something. What I didn't expect was dealing with my manager, who everyone called behind his back the tyrant. This guy had been managing the store for about 5 years and acted like he owned the place. He was one of those people who got a tiny bit of power and let it go straight to his head. He had this thing about embarrassing employees in front of customers. He thought it made him look like some kind of strong leader. I'd been there about 3 months when things started getting really bad. Corporate had cut our hours because of some budget issues, so we were always understaffed. Instead of having 4 people on the floor during busy periods, we'd have 2. Instead of 3 cashiers, we'd have 1. You get the picture? But the tyrant didn't care about any of that. If lines got long or customers had to wait, it was always our fault for being lazy or incompetent. He'd walk around with this little clipboard, timing how long we took with each customer, and if he thought we were taking too long, he'd swoop in and make a scene. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon in November. Black Friday was coming up, so people were already starting their holiday shopping. We were slammed, and it was just me and one other person on the floor, plus 1 cashier. I was helping this elderly couple find a tablet for their grandson when the tyrant appeared. He walked over and demanded to know what was taking so long, pointing out that I'd been with these customers for 10 minutes. I explained that I was helping them compare different models so they could make the best choice for their budget. The couple looked uncomfortable, but I kept trying to help them. That's when he really went off. He started yelling about how this was exactly why our sales numbers were down. He said I was too slow, didn't know the products well enough, and was wasting everyone's time. He pointed at the long line at the register and made sure everyone could hear him. Other customers were staring. The elderly woman looked embarrassed, like she was causing trouble just by asking questions. He kept going, saying that maybe if I actually read the training materials instead of just standing around, I'd know how to do my job properly. I told him I did read the training materials and was following the customer service protocols exactly like the employee handbook said. He scoffed and told me not to quote the handbook to him because he wrote half of those procedures himself. That's when it hit me. This guy was always waving around the employee handbook, telling us we needed to follow company policy to the letter. He'd written some of the procedures himself and was always bragging about how thorough and detailed they were. Every time someone made a mistake, he'd pull out that handbook and read the relevant section out loud like some kind of gotcha moment. After he walked away and I finished helping the couple, I went to the break room and really looked at that handbook for the first time. Not just skimming it like during training, but actually reading every single procedure, every single step we were supposed to follow. And wow, if you actually followed everything in there exactly written, it would take forever to do anything. When a customer wanted to buy something, the handbook said we had to greet them, identify their needs through questioning, show them at least 3 comparable products, explain features and benefits, offer extended warranty and accessories, process the transaction using specific steps, ask about our store credit card, ask about joining our rewards program, provide return policy information, and thank them while inviting them back. Most of us would skip steps or combine them to keep things moving, especially when we were busy, but technically, we were supposed to do every single one. The next Monday, I decided to follow the handbook exactly. Every step, every procedure, no shortcuts. A customer came in asking for batteries. I gave him the full welcome greeting and asked how I could help him find exactly what he was looking for. He seemed confused and said he just needed some AA batteries. I told him I'd love to help him find the perfect batteries for his needs and asked what device he'd be using them for. He said his remote control. I walked him over to the battery display and started explaining the differences between alkaline, lithium, and rechargeable batteries. I talked about battery life, cost per use, environmental impact, everything the handbook mentioned. He interrupted and said he just wanted regular batteries. I agreed that alkaline batteries were our most popular option, then asked if he'd be interested in our extended protection plan for his batteries. He looked at me like I was crazy and asked if I was talking about a warranty for batteries. I cheerfully explained that for just $2, he could protect his battery investment for up to 1 year. It was ridiculous, but it was right there in the handbook. We were supposed to offer extended warranties on everything over $5. By the time I finished with that customer, following every single step, it had taken 15 minutes to sell a $4 pack of batteries. The line was getting longer. Every customer that day got the full treatment. I explained features they didn't care about, offered warranties they didn't want, and asked about credit cards and rewards programs even when they clearly just wanted to pay and leave. The tyrant kept walking by, getting more and more frustrated while the lines grew longer and customers started complaining about wait times. But he couldn't say anything because I was following the handbook perfectly. At one point, he came over and asked why everything was taking so long. I smiled and told him I was just making sure to follow all the procedures in the employee handbook. You know, the one he helped write. By Wednesday, the complaints had reached corporate. Customers were calling to complain about wait times and pushy sales tactics. The district manager showed up unannounced on Thursday morning. I watched from across the store while she pulled the tyrant into the office. Even with the door closed, you could hear her voice getting louder and louder. She was asking what was going on with customer service and mentioned getting 12 complaints about wait times and aggressive upselling. He tried to defend himself by saying his employees were just following proper procedures. She shot back that his procedures were driving customers away and that customer satisfaction scores had dropped 15 points in 1 week. She stayed for the rest of the day, watching how we interacted with customers. When she saw me spending 20 minutes explaining different phone cases to someone who just wanted the cheapest one, she pulled me aside. The district manager asked what I was doing and why I was being so thorough with every customer. I showed her the employee handbook and pointed out that I was following every step exactly written. She flipped through the pages, getting more annoyed with each procedure she read. She called the tyrant over and asked him to explain why the handbook required offering extended warranties on items under $10 and why employees needed to show 3 comparable products even when customers knew exactly what they wanted. He started stammering about thorough customer service and maximizing sales opportunities. She cut him off and said this wasn't customer service, it was customer torture. She told him that corporate had spent years building customer loyalty, and his overly complicated procedures were destroying it in 1 week. The next day, the tyrant called a staff meeting. He looked defeated while he announced that we were updating our customer service procedures to focus on efficiency and customer satisfaction, rather than following every minor detail in the handbook. He avoided eye contact with me during the entire meeting. After that, he never publicly humiliated anyone again. In fact, he barely spoke to me unless he absolutely had to. A few weeks later, I heard the district manager had put him on a performance improvement plan. Apparently, corporate wasn't happy with how he'd been running the store. I'm a military veteran who served 2 tours overseas before coming back home and settling into civilian life. The transition wasn't easy and my German Shepherd Rex became my emotional support animal. He is not officially certified, but that dog has got me through some of my darkest moments dealing with anxiety and nightmares. Rex is gentle as a lamb, loves kids, and has never shown aggression toward anyone. He's basically my best friend and the reason I can function normally most days. I bought this house specifically because it had a large fenced backyard where Rex could run around safely. The previous owners had installed a 6-foot privacy fence, and I added some reinforcement to make sure Rex couldn't escape. Everything was perfect until the new neighbors moved in next door about 6 months ago. The family seemed normal enough at first. A single mom with her teenage son who looked to be around 15 or 16. I introduced myself when they moved in, offered to help with boxes, the usual neighborly stuff. The mom seemed pleasant, though a bit standoffish. The kid barely acknowledged me and spent most of his time on his phone. Things started going downhill about 3 months ago when the kid got a paintball gun for his birthday. At first, he was just shooting at targets in his backyard, which was fine, but then he started getting bored with regular targets and began looking for more exciting things to shoot at. That's when he discovered Rex. The first time it happened, I was inside making lunch when I heard Rex yelping. I rushed outside to find my dog cowering by the back door, covered in bright blue paint. There were paintball splatters all over my fence and patio furniture. I looked up and saw the kid's head disappear from behind his fence. I walked over to their house immediately and knocked on the door. I asked if her son was home and explained that I thought there had been a misunderstanding with his paintball gun. She wanted to know what kind of misunderstanding I was talking about. I told her that someone had shot paintballs at my dog in my own backyard, and that the paint was all over Rex and my property. She immediately got defensive and asked if I was accusing her son of something. I clarified that I wasn't accusing anyone, but just wanted to talk to him about being more careful with where he shoots. She insisted that her son wouldn't do that and claimed he was a good boy. She suggested that maybe my dog had gotten into something. I pointed out that my dog doesn't have access to paintballs and that I could see the trajectory of the shots clearly came from her yard. She said she would talk to him but doubted he had done anything wrong. I left it at that, hoping it was just a one-time thing. But 2 days later, it happened again. This time I actually saw the kid peeking over the fence and taking aim at Rex while he was just lying in the sun. I ran outside, but by the time I got there, the kid had disappeared again and Rex was covered in red paint. Back to the front door I went. I told her it had happened again and that her son had shot my dog with paintballs. She claimed that was impossible because he had been inside all day doing homework. I insisted that I had literally seen him and that my dog was covered in paint again. She suggested that maybe the shots were coming from somewhere else, mentioning that there were other kids in the neighborhood with paintball guns. I explained that the shots were coming directly from her yard and that I could trace the angle. She got angry and told me I couldn't prove anything, then accused me of harassing her family. This went on for weeks. Every few days I'd find Rex covered in different colored paint, clearly distressed and starting to become afraid of his own backyard. I tried talking to the kid directly when I saw him outside, but he'd just run inside and get his mom. When I tried to approach him one day, he immediately started yelling for his mom, claiming that the weird neighbor was bothering him again. I called animal control, but they said since there was no physical injury, it was a civil matter. The police said the same thing unless I had video evidence or witnesses. I set up a camera, but the kid was clever about staying out of sight. Rex was getting worse. He'd flinch every time he heard any loud noise and refused to go in the backyard alone. This dog, who used to help me through panic attacks, was now having anxiety of his own because some spoiled brat thought terrorizing animals was fun. The final straw came on a Saturday afternoon. I was upstairs in my bedroom, which has a perfect view of both backyards, when I saw the kid setting up what looked like a whole ambush for Rex. He had positioned himself with multiple paintball guns and a pile of ammunition. Rex was just lying on his dog bed, completely unaware. I watched when this kid took careful aim and fired 3 shots in rapid succession. Rex jumped up covered in yellow paint, whimpering and running for the house. The kid was laughing and high-fiving himself like he'd just won some kind of game. Something snapped in me. I went to my closet and pulled out my own paintball gun that I'd bought years ago for a company team building event but never used much. I loaded it up, opened my bedroom window, and took position. The kid was reloading for another round when I took my shot. Years of military training kicked in, and I nailed him right in the face from about 40 yards away. The bright green paint splattered across his entire head and chest. The kid dropped his gun and started screaming like he'd been mortally wounded. He ran around in circles for a few seconds before bolting for his house, leaving a trail of green paint behind him. He was yelling for his mom, claiming that someone had shot him. Within minutes, Karen was pounding on my front door like she was trying to break it down. She was screaming that she knew it was me and that I had shot her son. I played dumb and asked what she was talking about. She told me not to play dumb with her and kept yelling that I had shot her son with a paintball gun. I said that was a serious accusation and asked if she had any proof. She screamed that she didn't need proof because she knew it was me. I suggested that if someone had shot her son with paintballs, she should call the police, adding that it would be terrible if someone was shooting at kids. She declared that she was calling the police. She stormed off, and sure enough, two officers showed up about 20 minutes later. They explained that they had gotten a report that I had shot a minor with a paintball gun. I expressed concern and asked if someone had gotten hurt. They told me the boy wasn't injured but had been covered in paint. They mentioned that the mother was sure I had done it. I said that was a serious accusation and asked if they had any evidence. One officer explained that the mother claimed she knew it was me but hadn't actually seen it happen. I told them that I had actually been having problems with someone shooting paintballs at my dog for months. I showed them around my backyard, pointing out all the paint stains on my fence and patio furniture, explaining how Rex had been terrorized. The officers looked at all the evidence of the ongoing attacks on my property. They asked Karen if she had seen me shoot her son, and she admitted she hadn't actually witnessed it. Without any proof or witnesses, they couldn't do anything. They warned both of us about escalating the situation and left. After they drove away, I noticed something interesting. The paintball attacks on Rex stopped completely. The kid never shot at my dog again. Karen would glare at me whenever she saw me outside, but she couldn't prove anything. Rex gradually returned to his normal, happy self and started enjoying the backyard again. I'm a 30-year-old guy from Mexico, and this story happened when I was living in Atlanta. I had moved there a few years back to try something new, and things were going pretty well. I spoke Portuguese from my college days, so I ended up making friends with a lot of Brazilians in the area. Eventually, I saved up enough to open a small Brazilian bar. Nothing fancy, but it was mine and it was doing decent business. That's where I met her, this girl from Portugal. Let's call her Karen since that's exactly what she turned out to be. At first, she seemed great. We hit it off right away, started dating, and things moved pretty fast. I was living alone in this 3-bedroom place with just my dog, so when her lease ended and she got into a huge fight with her roommate, I offered to let her move in with me. Soon after, her whole family came to visit from Portugal. Her mom, her sister, the works. I let them all stay at my place too. I'm a pretty generous guy, maybe too generous looking back, but things were actually good for a while. We even started a cleaning company together that was taking off really well. We were making good money and decided to rent a bigger place together. Here's where I made my first mistake. I put the lease under my name because I had all the proper paperwork and she was still sorting out her documents. The very first day we moved into the new place, we had some stupid fight. I don't even remember what it was about, but it was the start of everything going downhill. The fights kept happening. She had this problem with drinking too much sometimes, and when she drank, she became a completely different person. Eventually, we both agreed to break up but decided to keep the business running 50-50 and live together until the lease ended. We figured we were adults and could handle it. One night, her mom knocked on my bedroom door looking really worried. She told me something was wrong with Karen and that she was acting really strange that night. I went to check on my ex. She was just drunk and half asleep, nothing unusual for her. We even joked around a little bit. I told her mom that Karen was fine and just needed to sleep it off. Her mom asked if I was sure because she seemed different, but I assured her that I had seen Karen like this before and she would be fine in the morning. The next evening around 8 p.m. I heard her calling my name really weakly from her room. I figured she had a bad hangover and needed water or something. But when I walked into her room, I knew immediately something was very wrong. She was throwing up, but that wasn't the scary part. When she looked at me, her face was completely pale and her lips were blue. She could barely speak. Then she pointed at her bed with a shaky hand. There was a half-empty bottle of Tylenol night and pills scattered all over the sheets. She had overdosed. I immediately called 911 and checked her pulse while staying on the line with the dispatcher. Then something terrible happened. She stopped breathing completely. I had never been so scared in my life. I started doing CPR, pumping her chest and giving her mouth-to-mouth until the paramedics showed up and took over. They rushed her to the hospital and she survived, but she spent 10 days in the regular hospital and another 10 days in a psychiatric hospital. The doctors diagnosed her as bipolar. During all that time, she didn't want me to leave her side. I stayed with her much the hospital would allow. When she finally came home, she was different. She was scared to be alone and even slept in my room again for about a week. For those few days, it almost felt like we were back to normal. But then the chaos started all over again. What really messed me up was that night when she overdosed. Watching someone literally die in your arms and having to bring them back to life, that changes you. After she got out of the hospital, I couldn't eat anything. I dropped almost 30 pounds because I just never felt hungry anymore. I couldn't sleep more than 2 hours a night. Every time I closed my eyes, I would see her face turning blue again. I later realized I had post-traumatic stress disorder, but at the time I just thought I was falling apart. She started seeing someone else almost right away after getting out of the hospital. Whatever, we were broken up anyway. But then one day she walked into my room with this crazy look in her eyes. She told me she was renting my room now and that I needed to move out. I started laughing because it was so ridiculous. I told her the lease had both our names on it, but I was the primary tenant, so she couldn't just kick me out of my own room. I kicked her out of my room and shut the door. She was screaming and pounding on it for a while, but eventually she left me alone. About a week later, I'm sitting at the kitchen table eating breakfast when 6 sheriff's deputies start banging on the front door with their guns drawn. They had a temporary restraining order against me. Apparently, Karen had gone to court and told them I had threatened her and hit her. Complete lies, but they had to follow the court order. The sheriff told me I needed to come with him right away and that I wasn't allowed back in the residence. I asked what was happening since I lived there. He explained that Karen had said I threatened and physically assaulted her, so I needed to leave immediately. They escorted me out of my own apartment with nothing but my dog. No wallet, no cash, no clothes, nothing. For 2 weeks until the court date, I lived in my Camaro with my dog. I showered at the gym and used gas station bathrooms. I tried to find a lawyer who would work for free, but nobody would take the case. One night, the cops woke me up because someone reported a person sleeping in their car. When I explained my situation, one of the officers got this strange look on his face. He asked me if I lived in that house with the red Honda and white Toyota outside. When I said yes, he told me something incredible. He said they were the same cops who responded the night I did CPR on my ex and that they remembered me. He said I had saved her life. They gave me their names and the report number from that night and said they would testify in court if I needed them to. The court date finally came. Karen showed up with her whole family, 3 friends, and a lawyer. I showed up by myself. I was nervous, but when the judge heard both sides of the story, it was clear he didn't believe a word she said. The judge told Karen that the court took false accusations very seriously. He dismissed the restraining order and warned her not to use the court system for personal revenge again. He said if she did, she could face criminal charges herself. I walked out of that courtroom feeling like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. But when I got back to the apartment, my room was completely empty. My cash, credit cards, passport, visa, everything was gone. She had cleaned me out while I was in court. My flight back to Mexico was in a couple of days anyway, so I decided to cut my losses. I ended the lease early, paid the penalty fee, donated whatever stuff I had left my car parked outside for whoever wanted it, and flew back to Mexico. I'm 23 years old and live in Manhattan. I work in finance during the week. On weekends, I like to blow off steam by hitting up the bars with my college buddies. We usually stick to the Lower East Side because that's where all the good spots are. It's pretty much the only nightlife we can afford on our entry-level salaries. I should mention something about myself. I'm a big guy, around 6 feet 2, and pretty built from playing football in college. I also happen to be black, which becomes relevant to this story. In New York City, most bouncers at the popular bars fit a certain profile. I match that profile pretty well. This leads to some awkward situations. It started small at first. People would hand me their identification cards when I was just standing near the entrance of a club waiting for my friends. Sometimes drunk girls would grab my arm and ask me where the bathroom was, while I was clearly in the middle of dancing. Most of the time I'd just laugh it off and redirect them to the actual staff. My friends thought it was hilarious. They joke that I should start charging people for directions or pretend to be security just to mess with drunk strangers. It got old pretty fast. I was just trying to have a good time like everyone else. The incident happened on a Saturday night in March. My college roommate was visiting from Boston. We decided to check out this trendy bar that had just opened. The place was getting great reviews online, but everyone else had the same idea because the line wrapped around the entire block. We'd been waiting for about 45 minutes, making small talk and catching up. I was telling my friend about this new project at work when this woman suddenly appeared next to us. She looked to be in her late 20s, dressed in an expensive-looking black dress with designer heels. She walked right up to me, completely ignoring my friend, and interrupted our conversation. She told me that I was the bouncer who had said she could skip the line. I was confused for a second because we weren't even close to the front of the line. We were still about 30 people back. I told her that wasn't me and tried to turn back to my friend, hoping she'd get the hint and leave us alone. She wasn't having it. Her voice got louder as she insisted that it was definitely me who had told her she could skip the line. People around us were starting to turn and look. My friend raised his eyebrows at me, clearly as confused as I was. I explained to her that she must have me confused with someone else because I wasn't security at the bar. She wasn't buying it. She practically started shouting, claiming she specifically remembered me, telling her she could come back and cut in line. The couple in front of us had turned around completely. I could see other people in line craning their necks to see what was going on. This was exactly the kind of attention I didn't want. She went on to say that she'd been walking around the neighborhood for 20 minutes looking for me. She said I had told her to come find me when she was ready to go in. I told her I've been standing in that exact spot for the last hour with my friend and hadn't talked to her or anyone else about skipping lines. She told me to stop playing dumb and demanded that I let her cut in front of me like I had supposedly promised. That's when I realized what was happening. She hadn't actually talked to any bouncer. She was just trying to use me as an excuse to skip the line, thinking I'd be too polite or embarrassed to call her out in front of everyone. My friend stepped in at this point. He told her that I had been there with him the whole time, and that we were customers just like her. She snapped back that she wasn't talking to him, and that this was between her and the security guy. She pointed directly at me when she said it. I felt my patience completely run out. I'm usually pretty calm, but something about her entitled attitude and the way she was trying to manipulate the situation just set me off. I told her that it wasn't me, so she needed to get to the back of the line. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone within earshot had stopped talking and was staring at us. Her face went from confident to shocked to embarrassed in about 3 seconds. She stammered something about how I had said something to her earlier, but I cut her off and repeated that she needed to get to the back of the line. I could hear people around us trying to suppress their laughter. Someone behind us whispered that it was crazy under their breath. The couple in front of us were grinning and shaking their heads. She looked around at all the faces staring at her, clearly hoping for some support. Everyone was either smirking or looking away in second-hand embarrassment. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something else, then apparently thought better of it. Without another word, she turned and walked away. Her heels clicked loudly on the sidewalk as she made her way to the back of the line that stretched around the block. My friend started cracking up as soon as she was out of earshot. He asked if she really tried to use me as a fake bouncer excuse. I told him I couldn't believe she thought that would work. I pointed out that even if I was security, why would I be standing in the middle of the line? The people around us were still chuckling and shaking their heads. The guy behind us patted me on the shoulder and said I handled it perfectly. The couple in front of us turned around and started chatting with us about how entitled some people could be. When we finally got inside the bar about an hour later, I spotted her sitting alone at a small table near the back. She was nursing what appeared to be a very expensive cocktail. She avoided eye contact when I walked past. My friend bought me a drink to celebrate what he called the most satisfying public shutdown he'd ever witnessed. We spent the rest of the night laughing about it and sharing stories with the new friends we'd made in line. It turned out to be one of the best nights out we'd had in months. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.